Good day, Internet. This is DTNS Live for Thursday, May 8th, 2025. From Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
From Columbus, Ohio, I'm Robb Dunewood.
And I'm Allison Sheridan from the Podfeet podcast empire.
And I'm today's producer, Amos.
Daily Tech News Show Live is made possible by its listeners. Thanks to all of you, including Paul Reese, Tim Deputy, Brandon Brooks, and we've got a new patron, Craig H.
Yay! Oh, we love new patrons. Thank you for joining us, Craig H. Welcome to the flock, or whatever we are. I don't know what kind of animals we are.
Brood.
But welcome to the brood, Craig H. And Amos, thanks for working the decks today. And welcome to everybody to DTNS Live, the show where we discuss the tech news to help us all understand it a little bit better. How y'all doing? Allison Sheridan, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Steve and I just got back from a trip to Japan and had a really
I
good
saw
time.
some of those photos. You guys had a fun trip.
We ate everything. The food. Everybody says, what, they were like temples and shrines and, Mount Fuji, that kind of thing. But man,
But
the
did you
food,
see
the
the
tempura,
food?
the udon, the
Okonomiyaki.
I'm glad you pronounced it. Yeah, that stuff was delicious. It was so fun.
I never
Even the-
had okonomiyaki until I went to Nara. I don't know if you guys went to Nara.
We didn't.
But yeah, near Kyoto, where all the deer are. But it was the first time that I had ever had that, and I was like, "Oh, this is Japanese pizza. I'm in."
Did you know that that came about? It's basically like this wheat-based super thin pancake that gets fried real crispy on the bottom of a bunch of vegetables and stuff on a big grill. That came from after the bombings. They didn't have rice. And so the U.S. brought in wheat, which they'd never had before, and they had all these pieces of metal left over from the bombings and everything. And so they started using those to grill on, and that's where that came from.
I did not know that.
Yeah, wild. We had a really good guide, told us great stories. He was very, very funny. He talked a lot about the shower toilets.
I've seen those. Yes, I am familiar as well. Well, we are also familiar with tech news. That's why we're all here. So let's go ahead and get into it with the quick hits.
Nintendo says it expects to sell 15 million Switch 2 units by March 2026, which is below analyst forecast of 16.8 million, likely due to tariff concerns and its typically cautious projections. Pre-orders sold out quickly, but Nintendo delayed pre-orders last month over U.S. tariff worries and faced some backlash over the $450 price.
The U.S. administration plans to scrap former President Biden's AI diffusion rule, which limited exports of advanced AI chips like Nvidia's H100 to most countries. The U.S. will now pursue what it says is simpler bilateral agreements while maintaining strict bans on China specifically. Nvidia, as you can imagine, welcomed the change, saying that the previous rules were overly complex and hurt U.S. innovation.
Rockstar says the second Grand Theft Auto 6 trailer is made up of equal parts gameplay and cutscenes, all captured in-game on a PS5. Some viewers, however, suspected it looked mostly cinematic. The trailer dropped shortly after the game's release was delayed to May 26, 2026, with Rockstar citing the need for more time to meet quality expectations on the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S consoles.
I have to ask really quickly before we move on, it never made a lot of sense to me that a game trailer was like a cinematic trailer, not what actually your gameplay is going to look like. Gamers don't seem to care because this is just how it's been going for a while. But the fact that Rockstar is saying, no, it's all gameplay seems significant in some way.
Yeah, there's trailers are a big part of games. I mean, it's part of the story. Some people are really into that. And some games, I mean, the trailers could literally be 20, 30 minutes if you watch them all together. So folks make a big deal out of them.
They're not necessarily from the game. That is curious.
Yeah, it's just trailer to and prelude to the game. Yeah.
Especially when you have games like Grand Theft Auto, they're very storytelling. So if you have a cutscene, something like that in the game, and it looks like junk, then gamers are going to hate that just as much as if the gameplay itself sticks and doesn't flow right. So you want to show both. But you definitely want to make sure that the audience knows, hey, this trailer does have gameplay in it and it has the cinematic in it. And I think there's some confusion there because they look so similar.
Yeah.
So we'll find out next year.
Well, speaking of gaming, Palworld developer Pocket Pair confirmed that it removed some game features because of an ongoing lawsuit with Nintendo, including the ability to summon creatures using a Pokeball-style Pal Sphere. The changes started with a patch back in November, with more coming in update VO.5.5, like replacing PAL-based gliding with a glider, for example. Nintendo is expected to release Pokemon Legends ZA later this year, so I think that's what the squabble is all about.
Instacart CEO Fidji Simo announced that she'll take on a role of OpenAI CEO of applications, reporting to Sam Altman. She's already an OpenAI board member and will fully transition later this year and lead efforts to bring the company's research to market. Simo will stay on as Instacart's board chair, with the new CEO to be named soon.
Apple is asking for a partial pause on a recent court order requiring it to let U.S. iOS developers direct users to external payment options without commissions. The order, tied to Apple's noncompliance with a 2021 ruling favoring Epic Games, bans fees and restrictions on links like this. Apple argues this goes beyond the original injunction, could cause major financial harm, because Apple just has no money in its pockets, and unfairly penalizes it over a ruling under dispute.
I, for one, am shocked. I'm shocked to hear that.
I know. Can you imagine Apple appealing such a thing? That's crazy.
It came out of nowhere. Never would have thought it.
Wikipedia's parent organization, the Wikimedia Foundation, is legally challenging parts of the UK's Online Safety Act, arguing that vague Category 1 rules could wrongly force Wikipedia to verify volunteer editors' identities, risking privacy, safety, all the things that go with, being anonymous otherwise. The foundation isn't opposing the law itself, but it wants a judicial review of how sites are categorized. Ofcom is the UK's government-approved regulatory and competition authority for broadcasting, internet, telecommunications, postal industries, and hasn't made final decisions yet. But this got me thinking of, Wikipedia has been part of my life since it's since before Allison was podcasting, and there is a lot of this just. I want to be part of a community. I want to volunteer. I'm not, getting a paycheck for this, but it's all about, freedom of information. That's what it is on its surface, right? Some people have problems with Wikipedia, but I wanted to open it up to the crew to just talk about how do we feel about this idea of, folks who, let's just say they have the best intentions in mind, but kind of behind the scenes running a lot of the stuff that we use for our information.
So there's a couple things here. I understand the law. I understand why the European Union is doing things the way that they're doing it. I also understand that Wikipedia, if you look at just things across the internet and, places where there are anonymous people creating information that other people consume, Wikipedia is probably one of the best places. They get it right. They do a very, very good job. It is. I don't want to say that there aren't any issues, that you never hear of an issue, but it's stuff is usually figured out very, very quickly if something needs to be pulled down or changed. And there are instances where some of the folks that are putting up this very, very useful information to the world don't necessarily need to be known by their name, their address, their IP address, those type of things. So I get where Wikipedia is coming from. We don't necessarily want to change the law, but maybe you should look at us a little differently than you look at maybe some other types of sites.
Exactly. Yeah. I think the Wikimedia Foundation is right in this situation of saying, listen, you go to Wikipedia, there might be a little something that is wrong here and there, but it will be changed in 5 seconds. You've got a really good army of volunteers going on here. Allison, what do you think about this?
Well, I'm definitely on board with exactly what you just said. And I was thinking about other services that are like this. If you look at an app like Call Sheet, which is like IMDb, except for without all the horrible ads, so you can actually get to the content you want. And it's an app that depends on something called the Internet Movie Database, which is entirely done by volunteers. And if you do still like IMDb, it also depends on volunteers. Some industry people, but also regular people can write up little blurbs about the shows and about the people and draw connections probably to Wikipedia of telling you about an actor or an actress. And so all of those people would be considered as part of this, I would think. And I think asking for more concrete guidance in these laws is probably a really good idea.
Yeah. Some years ago, gosh, I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago now, if not more, I used to have a Wikipedia entry for me. I mean, I didn't put it together because you're not supposed to do that for yourself. But you know, there was, you know, just sort of like general information about what I do for a living and, you know, who I'm married to and, you know, all that stuff. And eventually it was like, downgraded for being irrelevant. So I was like, all right. So, yeah, like I was like, what happened? You know, somebody's got it out for me and that's fine. You know, it's like, I really don't care. But I remember like that day I cared a lot. I was like, this is like actual information about me and not even stuff that like, this is not a bio I would have written about myself. This is just true stuff about me that other people know and, you know, have put together. So, yeah.
I don't know, Sarah. I would just say this. I know you're only 29, but I have been looking at you on the internet for the better part of 20 some odd years. So I know when you were like,
isn't that weird? Isn't that
started
weird?
doing
How
stuff.
time works?
That is
Time
pretty
busy.
impressive. I think that is not irrelevant information. I mean, you were 7-8 years old, you know, creating TV shows and stuff,
Yeah.
and you know,
Well,
like graduated college
already-
and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's kind of awesome.
We do know that she started her radio career with cassettes when she was a little girl.
That
Remember
is
telling me
true.
about that, Sarah, on one of my shows?
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's all true.
Little cassette
anyway,
deck.
this is all to say that the kind of like under the cloak of who's doing all the stuff, you know, at Wikipedia or Quora or I mean,
But the moderators of Reddit, would they?
yeah,
fit into this?
exactly. Reddit. I mean, great example. It's you kind of just you kind of know when it's working and when it isn't. And I feel like Wikipedia, I go there for information on people all the time. It's like, where'd that person grow up? Who are their parents? What's their nationality? I mean, so many things. And for the most part, sure. I mean, everything could be a little bit wrong here and there, but for the most part, it's actually the encyclopedia of the internet, which was what it was always meant to be.
I think it's important also to point out that a lot of the knowledge that we consider commonplace came around because an anonymous source had inside knowledge and shared that to help us all understand a certain topic or a certain time in a person's life or whatever else. If we start making it to where you can't have those anonymous sources that can, you know, then be fact checked and verified, you start stifling some of these stories and some of these ways that we've innovated and these processes that we've used to go out there and share with other people all this knowledge that we have. If we don't have those little elements of that particular knowledge that they shared anonymously because of, you know, maybe it was part of their job not to tell anybody or whatever else. But, you know, I don't think I'm so anti-privacy. I don't think privacy really exists. And anytime they try to force it down our throats, it hurts society.
That's a whole nother subject, isn't it?
It is. And
Can of worms.
if that
Pop.
strikes a chord, feedback at dailytechnewsshow.com as where to send your thoughts. All right. Well, in the interest of talking about tech, Rob, what's the latest with Samsung this week besides acquiring a bunch of audio brands, which they also did?
Well, sir, earlier this week, Samsung announced that it was launching something that is calling Tap to Transfer. And it's a payment feature in the US, and they're launching it this month, allowing Galaxy smartphone users to send money to friends and family by tapping their devices together via the Samsung Wallet app. Now, some of you iPhone users out there might be thinking, wait a minute. That sounds a lot like Tap to Cash, which came out with iOS 18 last fall, I believe. And it is. But there are some additional tricks that Samsung has up the sleeve because of partnerships with Visa and Mastercard. So I want to take this opportunity because Allison is one of the most Apple-y people that I know. She is into the Apple ecosystem. So I want to ask you, Allison, do you care about Tap to Cash? Because that's going to inform me on whether or not I should care about Tap to Transfer.
Well, I got to say, it wasn't until I saw this in the headline that I thought, oh, yeah, that's a thing, isn't it? First of all, I've never done it. Apple Pay Cash, when it first came out, all my friends and I started sending each other the same dollar. We were just passing $1 around to test it. But I've never figured out how to get money into Apple Cash. It's like you have to get money there in order to do stuff. So like with Venmo, it'll just go suck some more money. It'll say, hey, you got to go transfer some money. It'll tell me what to do, but Apple Cash just sits there waiting for you to be smart enough to figure out how to put money into it. So I couldn't tell you how much money I have in there, but I think it's like, actually, no, I do know. I use the Apple Cash to pay off my Apple Card because that's the only thing I want to spend money on because you don't make any money on spending it on that. So if I use a credit card, I always want to get the points, get the money and that sort of thing. So I didn't remember this was a thing. So I could go try it later today if you want me to, Rob, to see how it works.
I was just wondering because it's like I said, I know there's going to be some iPhone users that are listening that are going to say, hey, this sounds awful lot like Tap to Cash. But there are, as I said, some major differences here. One of them is that Samsung has worked out these deals with Visa and Mastercard. So in addition to being able to send money to other people who use Samsung Galaxy devices that actually have the app, you can send money to anyone who has a debit card that is NFC enabled. So if you can tap with your debit card, someone could send you money from their Samsung wallet via the tap to transfer using this app, which I thought was actually kind of interesting. Still don't know that I would actually use that. And this is coming from someone who is all in on mobile payments. I have been using Samsung Pay since Samsung Pay came out years ago. And it is very rare that I actually will use a credit card before I will use my watch or my phone to pay for something. But we'll just have to see. I just don't know how comfortable I would be. I don't even, I'm afraid of this. I believe that there's definitely security and stuff like that there. I just don't know how often I would be willing. Hey, let me pop your phone out. Let me tap it. And then I can send you some money. I just don't know how often that would come up where I don't really use Venmo, but I do use Zelle and Cash App all the time. PayPal I use all the time. I don't know how much more beneficial this would be as compared to those things. The fact that I actually have a Samsung Pay account, maybe it would make it easy to do it if I was sending money to someone via their card. But, even though there's a lot of people who use Samsung phones, there's not a lot of people who are using Samsung Pay. So I wonder how utilitarian this would actually be.
Well, and this, you mentioned that you don't really use Venmo, but you use Cash App and PayPal and other options. I use Venmo a lot. I mean, and I still don't know who are the people out there who want to make their purchases public. Why are you doing this?
People do
Because
this.
it
Why are you
defaults
doing
to that,
this?
Sarah. It defaults, so people don't know.
But this was like a thing that people knew years ago, and they still do it. It's so weird, and it's not even like oh, I'm paying for weed or like I don't know. It's like the payments themselves aren't all that interesting, but I'm just like no,
I like to text people. Like I texted my son. I said, "Oh man, how was that sushi last night?"
right.
It's like, how did you know I had sushi last night? I said, well, because you paid Cody for it, you dope. And then he's like, how did you know that? It's like, oh, let me change that setting.
I had 3 or 4 of my neighbors ask me I had 3 or 4 of my neighbors ask me who I went through to get my roof fixed because it showed that I'd paid on Venmo to get my roof fixed after we had a windstorm and I lost some shingles because I didn't know it was a social thing because I'd never used Venmo before.
Yeah, who would want it to be? By the way, this just in, I just asked Perplexity, how do I see my balance in Apple Cash? It told me to look in Apple Wallet. I looked, I got $22, so that's exciting. And I said, okay, let me figure out how to add money. I found the button. It says, unable to add money. Use a debit card to add money to your... So I have to go enable a debit card, put that into Apple Pay, where I've never kind of want to use that. I don't ever use a debit card from here. And it's just too hard. I'm out.
No, Sarah, you were pretty into Apple as well, Sarah. So, Sarah, you're pretty into Apple as well. Do you use Tap to Cash? Do you use Apple Pay regularly?
Not really.
Yeah. And use Apple Pay.
You
use Apple Pay. You said you use.
No.
Pay, right?
I definitely do, but I also. So here's the deal: the promise of payment systems like Apple Pay and Samsung Pay, where you can just sort of just have your phone on you, walk out of the house, no wallet, no purse, no nothing. And I just don't do that very often. Mm-hmm. I just don't. I just feel weird if I don't do it because I don't know. I got doggy poop bags and there's just too many other things that I have to have on my person. So it actually isn't something I need all that often. I do have friends who they will literally just walk out of the house. It's like you don't have car keys, you don't have a wallet, all you got is the phone. And, do you guys take Apple Pay? Oh, you don't? Well, I guess Sarah has to pay. So there's a little bit of that going on.
So do you use physical cards?
Yeah.
Like an animal? Wow.
Yeah. In fact, I'll show you.
That's a last resort. I use it for parking, where you got to stick a card in sometimes. Getting out of a parking.
As soon as I can get my driver's license and my veterans card in my Apple Wallet, I will never carry a wallet with me again.
Well, so my wallet.
That's where I'm at with it.
For the video folks, welcome to my wallet. This is a strange wallet. I don't know why I use this, but that's what I use. My cards don't even actually fit in here. You can't close. You can't close. No, you can't close the zipper. But it's also really small, so it's not a big deal. Anyway,
and it's with you.
So maybe I'm just a dinosaur at this point. But yeah, I don't. Listen, the Apple Pay has saved me here and there. There have definitely been times where I'm like, oh crap, I don't have what I thought I had with me. And it works out well. But yes, the tap to pay and the tap to transfer thing is awesome. I'm going to assume that Samsung understands its markets. The U.S. maybe not its strongest market at this point, because there are lots of markets that are just kind of way ahead of us when it comes to just finances and doing this stuff in general. But yeah, I welcome it.
Yeah, most Americans are completely okay with handing their credit card to someone in a dark room, and they walk away with it for 3 to 5 minutes, and they come back, hand them the card back and a piece of paper to sign their name. And we're good with that. You go to Australia, you go to Europe, and people will say, how do you guys live like this? It's so uncommon in other places. Allison, you just being in Japan, I would imagine that, handing your card and somebody walking away with it's probably not a thing there.
You wouldn't do that. Whenever I do that, I always say, buy yourself something pretty, because I fear they're going to, right? I did have one tip for, Amos, you're talking about trying to get rid of the wallet altogether. I just found out that if you have a AAA card, if you put the app on your phone, you can add the AAA card to Apple Wallet. So that's going to get rid of one more card. I'm all for getting rid of cards.
Yeah, I have to get a new driver's license. I'll get I think, what is it called? The Real ID.
Real ID.
Here in a couple of weeks. But I still have to carry the physical card. So if I got to carry the physical card, it's going to go in the wallet. If it goes in the wallet, there's going to be 1 or 2 credit cards in the wallet with it. Now, one thing that is different for me is that I have more than 2 credit cards, but I only have 2 in my wallet. All of them are loaded to my phone for Samsung Pay. And maybe once or twice have I gone somewhere and wanted to use one of those other cards, and I just couldn't get it to work. So I had to pull out a different card that I didn't necessarily want to use. But it's so rare that happens anymore. Most places, the NFC terminals work pretty well. From my understanding, is like I really don't see issues anymore over the last few years with them.
Of course, this is all fun and games, but America's biggest retailer, Walmart, still does not accept Samsung Pay or Apple Pay. They only
Nor will
accept
they ever.
Walmart Pay.
Nor will they ever.
The largest retailer. We're talking about how we would walk around with no cards at all, no wallet. We still got Walmart. If you're a Walmart shopper at all, you can't. It's just
maybe you stick it in your
There
glove
was
compartment.
there was another retailer. It might have been Target, which is sort of my favorite Walmart alternative. Maybe I don't know if I have this right, but they were like, no, we're not. It's going to be our own thing, and then they just said, oh, screw it. It's just way better for everybody if we go with the tech bros on this one.
Walmart is big enough that they can say, no, we're not doing that. Sign up to our own program. They are so big that they can get away with it. Most other retailers simply just aren't big enough to not at least have NFC payments enabled in their stores.
Yeah, right. W. Scott one brings up Currency. I remember, I think that was the CVS one that crashed and burned, luckily, quickly.
Yeah.
Well, folks, we listen to our supporters because we make this show for you. So if you've got a few minutes, please fill out our annual DTNS survey. Let us know what about DTNS family of shows is working for you. Let us know what isn't working for you. It's fun to do, and it really helps us out. So do us a solid. Head over to dailytechnewsshow.com/survey and fill out our annual survey. We would really appreciate it if you do.
Allison Sheridan, you may be the first podcaster on the planet. I'm not totally sure, but the NozillaCast launched on May 13th, 2005, making it the at least longest running Apple-centric podcast. We're at 20 years now. So how does it feel?
Well, I'm pretty excited about it. I was not the first podcast. Adam Curry did the Daily Source Code in August of 2004, and I'm not even the first Apple-centric podcast. That was Adam Christensen. He started the MacCast in, I think it was October 2004, but he retired his podcast at exactly 19 years. So at 20 years, I now have the longest running Apple-centric podcast, and I'm pretty proud of that. I think that's kind of cool. I even had exciting shirts made, which I'm showing the live audience. 20 years of podcasting.
Yay.
And so, it's my daddy always said, if you can't toot your own horn, who's going to do it for you?
Allison, that is such a ridiculous level of consistency that you have shown with this show, because not only is it 20 years, it is 20 years with only a handful. You can count them on one hand, the number of weeks that you've missed in 20 years.
Yeah, I used to say I'd done it for 20 years without missing an episode, but I did an episode recently called I'm a Liar, where I discovered that in 2007 there was a 3-week period where we were in Italy and I didn't do the show. But ever since then, when we go off on our big adventures, like we just got back from Japan, we have people who step in and host the show for me. And Bart Buchatz has done it a million times. And most recently, Joe from the Northwoods and Alistair Jenks have stepped up. But there's been a whole host of people over the years who have stepped in when I'm away. And we're kind of like all in it together, that there's this streak that we can't let it go. And that makes it fun, too.
Yeah, it's an incredible consistency. I was talking to, a friend of the show, a friend of ours, Bodie Grimm, yesterday, and was saying this, like, I kind of feel that a lot of times people will say when they're talking about content creation and podcasting and stuff like that, they will say, well, how long, you just stay consistent and you'll be good. And I'm like, okay, yeah, go to work every day and you'll get paid. That's kind of like a given. But the fact that you have been doing this for 20 years, week in and week out, with just a handful of weeks that you didn't actually, air a show, is pretty incredible. So hats off to you.
Well, thank you. Nick with the C reminds us that the Twit pilot was in January 2005. So Twit has been on the air longer than I have, and they have a very, very good streak going. But it was actually Leo Laporte who says this perfect answer, what people tell you about being consistent. People ask him, how do you become, a huge podcaster? He says, first, start with an internationally famous radio show. So my answer to you of how to be consistent is be born with a gene that doesn't allow you to stop doing things. I worked for the same company for 35 years. We've lived in this house, more than 30. Now, how long is it? I don't know, 30 years, something like that. We've been married for 42 years. So I go to the same hairdresser for like 17 years, and I don't even care whether I go to that hairdresser. I'm just really good at doing things. Once I say I'm going to do it, I just do it. And, you know, one of the things I like to talk about when my brother died more than 20 years ago, and he was the kind of guy who would just do stuff. Like, I mean, he built a farm in Kauai because he was living in Hawaii and that wasn't cool enough. He had to move to Kauai. And I kept thinking, how do you do that kind of thing? He goes, well, you just do it. And so I kept thinking that I wanted to start a podcast, and I heard him in the back of my brain going, well, just start, just do it. And that's kind of what got me started was his inspiration to just start doing things. Keeping things going, a big part of it for me is I've got a live audience. We do a live show like what we're doing right now. And knowing that there's people there right now listening really is energizing. I mean, I feel a commitment to always be there at 5 o'clock on Sunday nights. I mean, we start on time. We're always there, and that keeps me going. The live audience is a huge part of it. And I know a lot of the people from DTNS come to my live show too. So, you know, the cross-pollination is super fun too.
That brings in one of the things that I think is most interesting about you as a podcaster and your podcast in particular is, you know, Tom Merritt, he likes to say that you get the audience you deserve.
Yes.
You have not only gotten the audience you deserve, but you've incorporated your audience in a lot of the things that you do. So it's not just you podcasting. It's almost like your podcast is of a community for that community. And, you know, you all just like you said, you've had people volunteer to keep it going while you're away, but your general podcast involves a lot of the community that follows your podcast. And it's really amazing that way.
Well, thanks. It does feel like and I think about Tom saying that. I've heard that in my head a lot of times. And, you know, I leave everything wide open. My email is wide open. My community over in Slack is wide open. Podfeet.com/Slack if you want to join. It's wide open. And we never get any nasty people. It just doesn't happen. I don't know. You know, every once in a while, one of the good guys will post something like, yeah, this little sketch, you know, can you, and oh, I'm sorry, let's delete that. You know, that's the closest we ever get where maybe they put a swear word in something, and I try to keep it clean for the kids. But yeah, the community is fantastic. And that's what feeds me. I have a friend who's a podcaster, very successful podcaster, and he doesn't want a community. He has no forum, no discussion thing. He likes people to write to him, and he writes back to them, and that's it. It's all one-to-one. He doesn't want a community, and that's great. Everybody's different, but I thrive on that. I thrive on the interaction with the people. And it's funny, in real life, people apologize for asking me questions about how to do something like, why did they wreck Apple Photos? I don't know. But I always tell them, I said, no, I do this for a hobby. I do this for fun. I do this for my podcast all the time. Why wouldn't I help you? You know, it's a lot of fun.
It kind of goes back to our conversation earlier in the show about, you know, people being, you know, volunteers on Wikipedia, for example. It's like, that's a community. Somebody decides, this is something that is meaningful to me. I want to contribute to this thing. And we definitely have that on DTNS over our family of podcasts. Like, there are so many people who they like us. You know, we're it's like, oh my gosh, you really like me. Yeah, I'm very Sally Field right now. But to have gone, you know, over this journey for so long, Allison. I mean, what do you think are the big takeaways from what you thought you were doing at the beginning and what you're doing now?
Well, I love my first episode to listen to, because I tell people that what I'm going to do is I'm going to read Walter Mossberg's column in the Wall Street Journal about tech, and then I'm going to tell you what I learned from it. That was what the show was going to be about. It's obviously not about that anymore. That was a big change, but just starting on a topic that you can't stop talking about is one of the tricks to being good at podcasting, I think. I used to bother people in line at grocery stores and, you know, the DMV or whatever. And then I thought, well, what if I just talk to people who want to listen to me? Now I still bother people in the grocery store line, but it was a strategy. One thing that hasn't changed, well, it changed at the very beginning. When I first started, Leo had done, I think it was Call for Help, he had turned into a podcast. And so I wanted to do a podcast, so I downloaded his feed. It's an XML file, which is it's a very normal looking file. It's all plain text and everything. And I copied, okay, you put in brackets item and then close brackets, / item, that kind of thing. And I typed everything in by hand into a text editor. And I got to the part where he talked about, one of the things said length. And it was a number, a big, long number in quotes. I'm like, length of what? What is that? Seconds? Is it milliseconds? Turned out it was bytes that I had to type. So it's like 3974682. I mean, I was down to that level. And then I eventually found something called Feeder from Reinvented Software. And it's a piece of software that lets me create the feed automatically. I've been using it. I asked Steve Harris, the author, to see if he could find out when I first started using it. It was September 18th, 2005, when I first bought the software. I'm still using it to create my feed today because it's perfect. I just love it.
We also use it to publish the video version of this show.
Very good, very good. Big shout out to Steve Harris. If you do a get info on the app or about this app, you'll notice he credits me for the screenshots that are in the app and for generally being annoying.
Yeah. So Allison, one last thing before we move on. Folks who listen to NosillaCast, they know that even though you're the face of the show, you're not a one-person show. There is another person that is often lurking in the background off camera because they are very rarely on camera. But you mentioned you've been married for 42 years. Tell folks about your producer who has been on this journey with you for the last 20 years.
Yeah, Steve is 100% could not do this without him. He started taking over parts of the live show from me when it was like juggling 300 things that I was producing the live video show and the feed and watching the chat room and doing the recording and everything all at the same time. And it was killing me. And not to mention it was killing my computer. So he said, well, maybe I can start helping. And then he started getting involved in it. And now he's huge in the community. He just loves it. He loves doing the producing. He's the reason we start on time. I'm like, it doesn't really matter if it's 5:02. He goes, no, we start at 5 o'clock. So he's
I've got colleagues like that. Do I ever?
He's really big on that, but he also does all of the videography of my interviews at CES and CSUN Accessible Tech Conference, and he produces all of those videos, and he is a machine. We just finished producing our last CES video because there were 55 interviews from CES. So he did all of those videos and produced it. But the thing nobody knows is that he does everything around the house. He does the grocery shopping. He pays for the insurance and all of the house stuff, with the exception of, I think I do the dishes and that's about it. And I wax his car, occasionally help wash his car, but he does everything else about cooking and taking care of the house.
Can Steve be cloned?
I think
I would like unique. A Steve.
Everybody should have a Steve.
Not to say you, Rob, and Amos aren't Steves in your own mind, but I'm like, that sounds pretty great.
You know Steve well. We are not Steve. We are not. He's a machine.
Yep, he is wonderful. So anyway, that's my big story. I'm very excited about it, and I appreciate you guys letting me come on and toot my own horn here.
Well, I mean, hey, listen, anybody who's been podcasting regularly for 20 years, I mean, appreciate you, and you obviously love what you do, and that's awesome.
It's fun that people know what podcasts are now. They used to go, wait, what? What's a podcast?
Totally. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I still have people who I have to be like, well, it's a show on the internet.
It's like a magazine
like,
subscription.
where do we start?
It's like Larry King, but on your iPhone.
Yeah. All right, there's been a lot of talk this week about AI hitting a bit of a power ceiling, but not the kind you solve by adding more GPUs. Amos, you've got the story.
AI is getting faster, smarter, hungrier for power. Today, execs from Microsoft, OpenAI, AMD, and others told the Senate that the U.S. power grid just isn't ready for what's coming. They warned that without major upgrades, America could fall behind in the global AI race. Microsoft's Brad Smith called it a digital infrastructure issue, pointing out that data centers are already pushing the limits of the current power grid. They're asking for faster permits, better access to federal land, and a real plan to scale energy where it's needed most. It's not just about building better AI, it's about keeping the lights on while we do it. So are we expecting the government to step up and modernize the grid, or is this something tech companies will end up handling themselves? I asked the crew.
I think it's going to be a combination of all of these things that are happening. We absolutely need to upgrade our infrastructure from a country standpoint. Our grid is woefully inadequate for the power consumption that we will need that we need right now. I mean, we have rolling blackouts regularly right now, depending on what state you live in. So there are significant issues with our current infrastructure, but I think that it's not going to all be the government to fix it. It's companies they can't wait. They're going to have to do some things on their own. And we are in an AI race. Our biggest competitor is probably China. They don't have power issues there. If they have the power issues there, they solve them very quickly. That is not something that necessarily happens here. So it's not just about, can you get the best chip? Can you get the best model? Can you get the best computer to run the models, with the chips and all that kind of stuff? It is, do you have the power to actually make these things run? And we're about to hit a wall very, very soon. So it's going to be interesting to see what we do from a company standpoint and also from a federal standpoint, from a country standpoint.
So I was thinking about how in Iceland, what they've done is tapped into their geothermal power. And this is sort of like our previous thing. How do you do something forever? How do you make free energy? Well, start with having geothermal power. But being able to tap into the natural resources that we do have and the renewable energy that we do have and can build is obviously one of the places that we've got to go. In Japan, one of the questions I asked was how much renewable energy do you use? And it was only about 26%. And they said that they have geothermal power, but the people that run the mineral baths, the hot mineral bath organization, is a powerful lobby, and they're afraid that it'll go away if someone starts using the geothermal power to power things for electricity. And it's like, well, okay, so you got to start with like evidence and science and figure this out.
That is interesting. It's like if you suck power out of the planet that has been around for billions of years with enormous amounts of it, our bathhouses water may not be as hot.
There's no evidence.
That is, I have not heard that one yet, but
there's no evidence to say that would be an issue, but they're convinced of it. So, I sat in one of those hot mineral baths. I don't want that to go away. The other thing I was reading about recently was how much water is being sucked up and used because of cooling all of these compute farms. That's a concern since we live in beyond Thunderdome in California now.
Yeah. It's not just electricity. It's water. It's power. It's renewable resources. There's still we still have this stigma in the United States about nuclear power, and we could fairly easily ramp up our nuclear power, but we don't want to put the money into it because of the stigma around it. Even though all the problems we've ever had with nuclear power were from plants designed in the 50s and built in the 60s, and now we're in the 2020s with so much better technology and everything else. It's something that, especially just as the U.S., we have Silicon Valley, we have all these major companies here that are trying to build AI. We do not have an adequate power grid, like Robb said, for what we're doing right now. And if we're going to be scaling up for AI, for just data centers in general, we're going to have to do something about it. And it's going to, I think Robb's right. I think it's going to have to collaborative effort between private and public funding. Maybe we can use some of the AI to find the best way to scale up our power to feed more AI.
There you go. Design a power grid that would work for this.
Well, this is how much power and just, transmission lines and all the stuff that we need. I was reading somewhere that we need literally 30 to 60,000 electricians to be trained and move into the job, and that's net new. So there's a lot that are retiring, so you need to replace them as well. So the number's going to be higher than that. Some estimate as many as 75,000 by like 2030. It takes a minute to become an electrician. So we need to literally today get 100,000 folks that are going to get into the program, knowing that some are going to wash out of it. that we actually just have enough people who can even do the work for our demands coming up in the not too distant future. It's like, we say 2030, like that's a long time away. That's 5 years away. That is a new car note away, or a new car lease away from where we need to have significantly more people who can do stuff with electricity than we have right now that can do stuff with electricity.
And to feed into that, Rob, I just recently looked into it after I retired from the Air Force. So when I was thinking about becoming a civilian electrician, and even with 20 years of experience working on electrical systems in aircraft, it was going to take a 1-year apprenticeship to become the lowest level, just a journeyman, to become 3 years of that under the watchful eye of a certified electrician to become a junior craftsman. And that's when you can actually work on it by yourself. So it's 4 years of work experience, just to get to the point where you can work by yourself. And that's in the state of Alaska to get licensed here.
And that's after your years of experience in the Air Force.
That's with my 20 years of experience leaning into that. Which cut my apprenticeship in half. It took a year. All that 20 years of working on airplanes took a year off my apprenticeship. So it's not, but it's really good money. I mean, I've encouraged all my kids. They all wanted to go to college and do this and do that. And I've always been like, you should just go to a tech school, find a trade, get into blue collar work because it pays well. It's steady work. But everybody's dreaming of being a YouTube star right now instead of, powering houses.
Yeah, STEM is a good thing. And like I said,
I say that as a parent. That is not an indication of an entire generation. That's just the 4 in my house. That's what they all want to be instead of.
Yeah, right. I think AI is probably coming for everybody's jobs, but it's going to come for the electricians and the welders and the pipe fitters last because they actually have a skill.
Although the 3D printing, revolution, right? Some years ago was all like, ooh, gosh, the plumbers, the electricians, they won't have jobs anymore. Didn't really pan out that way.
No. Yeah. Weird thing is that you actually need to make very numerous judgment calls when laying pipe around other pipe and around cables and around trees, around property lines, all those things. That manual labor, there's a lot more thinking to it than just grunting the pipe into place, and that's where the AI just can't be there yet. So we'll see.
Well, yes, we will see. We will definitely see.
Trade schools, kids, trade schools.
An ongoing news story as it unfolds. All right, well, let's check out the mailbag.
Tim wrote in about our physical buttons in cars conversation, and he writes, I'm so glad I got my current car. It's a Honda Fit just after they returned the power and volume to physical buttons on the stereo entertainment system. There are some things that just should always have a tactile component while driving. Thankfully, HVAC controls have stayed physical too. Too bad they stopped making the whole dang model of the car. Guess it joins the iPhone mini models as products that I'll always love, but their manufacturers don't.
I did not realize the Honda Fit had been sunsetted.
I didn't know that
until
either.
Tim wrote in.
I told you guys in the green room, I had never heard of a Honda Fit until today. I am today years old. I'd never heard of this car before.
Well, we explained to Rob that it's smaller than he is, so he probably would have never made his radar.
The Honda
he probably
Fit
stepped
is like,
over
yeah,
it.
like it's not small like a smart car, but it's a compact
it's like
little.
It's like a Mini Cooper size. Like
exactly.
Car,
yeah, exactly. And it was very, at least in San Francisco back in the day, it was a very popular car because, of course, people want small cars, in that city.
There we go. There's the 2020 that Joe brought up on the screen. Yeah. So it's not a bad car, and it's not one of those cars that you curse out on the freeway because it's not going fast enough, like you do Priuses. But it's definitely a small car. It's very economical.
Do you do that with Priuses?
I know many people that do.
Only behind Tom.
I don't care because I drive a big truck. So if you're slowing me down,
but my question
hypermile, that's good.
My question is not like I know a lot of people who have Priuses. Can you not go above a certain mph?
I think it's more of a hypermiling personality trait that a lot of Prius owners have.
So can I get back to the point of Tim's question?
Yes, please do. Please do.
At the risk of getting us on target. I've been very vocal about the fact that the not having physical control of the HVAC in my Tesla is annoying, that it really bothers me that I have to take my eyes completely off the road, go to the bottom of the screen, tap a button to bring up the control to change temperature or change the fan direction, for example. And I was with a friend of mine who has a Tesla, and she's test driving other cars, and we went to drive the Polestar 3. And one of the things I loved about it was it had physical little controls for how the air vents hit you. And I said, oh, that's great. I hate it that I have to use a screen to do that. And she said the weirdest thing. She said, oh, no, this is ugly. I don't like seeing that. I really prefer going to the control on the screen and bringing it up that way. And I was shocked. It proves that everybody's different, right?
Until these things are truly driving themselves 100% of the time, physical buttons just make sense. It's safer that you don't like. I never have to look at the button to turn the heat up in my truck, or to turn the air conditioner on in my truck, or to turn windshield wipers on in my truck. I don't have to look. There's physical knobs and dials and buttons and sticks and control surfaces that have tactile touch to them. You just touch them. And you can feel what they are. I hope that never goes away. I kind of think I might be a dinosaur in that, but
I think we got to find the right balance. Like the Tesla says, okay, no buttons. It's sort of like Steve Jobs and the iPhone, no buttons kind of thing. But then there's other cars that we've looked at where it's just, we call it button barf, where my eyes bleed
Button
looking
barf.
at these cars. Because it's just buttons all over the place. And the problem is we disagree on which buttons need to be there. So the answer is all buttons or no buttons. And there's got to be some sort of middle ground in there where we have some buttons.
In my truck, I have I can't control the specific like which vents are going to be open or whatever on without going into a touch menu, but I have an automatic button and I have a heat and a cool button, and that's like my bare minimum. I have the basic necessity needed where I can choose automatic mode and then just give me a certain temperature. And the only time I ever touch it is after my wife drives my truck, because she always wants to make it either super hot or super cold in there. And I leave it at 64 automatic mode all the time. So it is what it is.
To prove my point about everybody wants a different button, I was talking about this with my friend Stephen Getz, and he said, Allison and I have literally never changed the temperature in my car since the day I bought it.
Oh my gosh, I changed my temperature like 5 times
on a drive.
day.
Yeah.
Right. But
I mean,
you know what he
sometimes
changes all
I
the
actually
time?
don't drive at all. But when I do, I'm like, no. I'm a little hot. I'm a little cold. I'm a little
Right. The one he does use all the time, though, is the brightness of the display, because he drives on dark roads at night. He's always adjusting that. And I didn't even know that was a thing anymore. I forgot about it, that it existed.
I think mine is just all automatic. It just
Maybe.
Most of them are, but like
if you go through a tunnel, the lights go on, and everything is
the brightness of the
nighttime
display,
mode, and then you go back into the sunshine and it goes back. It's not something that I actually.
This is like the tachometer and all that. The light's there directly in front of you. That's what he plays with.
Yeah, I've got a little knob in my truck where I can turn them up and turn them down, because if you are on a really dark road and it's like, there's no stars out, there's, it's overcast and it gets really dark, those things can be super bright. So I do regularly turn them down. But once again, I know exactly where that button is. I don't have to look at a screen to actually make the screen not hurt my eyes. I just reach for the button and turn it to the left.
I never change it other than going from daytime mode to the maximum brightness in nighttime mode. And that's like the little, it's like it scales up as it gets brighter. Then all of a sudden there's like a little indent and it goes full bright. That's that little indent. I just go up and down on that. That's
but you see what I mean? We all have different buttons that we want, that's what leads to button barf.
Yep. I don't know if I could drive a car without radio controls on the steering wheel. I just don't know if I'd have to take it back.
Well, we do.
You probably are capable of doing that. You just don't.
My car doesn't
want
have
to
radio.
Well, we have been talking about all sorts of things that we like to do and not do. Remember, you can send your comments into us at feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. Please send them early and often. It really makes our show better. We want to know how you feel, what resonates. And thank you in advance. Also, thank you to you, Allison Sheridan. You're the podcast queen. You've been doing it. You've been doing it for a long time, and you always bring great knowledge to us when you're with us. Let folks know where they can keep up with your work.
Well, if you want more sage advice like this, head on over to podfeet.com because everything good starts with podfeet.com.
Podfeet.com. There you go.
Allison, once again, congratulations. 20 years.
Thank you.
Doing a podcast. That is something special. So we applaud you with that. But folks, you have been submitting your show titles over at dtns.showbot.tv, and we've got some pretty good ones over there. So let's just go through a few of them. Now, this one is awesome. This is by Batfink 2001. Today's DTNS has an ever so slight no silicast bias.
Yes. That's
so
my
cute.
tagline for people who don't know.
That is awesome. Stealth Dave comes in with Cash Me Outside, Samsung.
Oh, I like that,
That is
one.
a good one.
That I like. I like that one.
What was that young lady's name? I think Bad Barbie or Bad Bobby
Bad
or something like
baby.
that. Bad baby. Yeah.
But
Cash Me Outside.
with an H. Yeah. Cash me outside. How about that? Yeah.
Fred
times.
819 chimes in with Buy Something Pretty.
That was the credit card comment.
Oh, got it. I was like, buy something pretty? Yeah.
Buy yourself something pretty, yeah.
Larry in Atlanta has Calling All Electricians. And yes, we definitely need to. We need more of them.
Ooh, way down, I see Sarah is forever relevant. I like that one.
Thank you. I thank you. I thank
C-Spawn.
you for that. I am relevant. Okay. Maybe
You
I
are.
don't have a Wikipedia entry anymore. I don't know what that person was doing with their life, but who cares? I'm relevant.
And here's
Sitting
another
here
one
right
for you,
now.
Allison. Podfeet Podcast just did it. C-Spot.
I like it. I
So,
like
Sarah, what did we decide to go with today?
Oh gosh, Rob, that's a great question because I don't know the answer. I don't know. Collectively, let's pick one. What is our title today? I like the Samsung Cash Me Outside. I did.
That's a good one.
Sounds
That
good.
That is a
Sounds
good one. Cash Me Outside.
Yep.
That will be it then. Yes.
Congratulations, Stealth Dave.
Thank you, Stealth Dave, and thank you to everybody who submits show titles every day. It's just fun. It's just fun. You should do it. You know, if you've been lurking this whole time, you know, just submit a show title. You might get your name in lights. Amos, who do we have to thank today?
Well, let's start with the Twitch folks. Mr. C Flat followed us, which is always appreciated. Hockey Sticks subscribed with Prime. That's 41 months on Prime. Zoe Brings Baking cheered us with 4 bits. Trisha Hirschberger rated us with 207 viewers, which we really appreciate. Thank you, Trisha. Vegas Guy followed us, and then G. James Bead gave us 5 bits about 10 minutes ago, which is super awesome. We didn't get any YouTube stuff today, but we did get a Patreon raise from Dennis.
Yay!
And,
Thank you,
Thank you very
Dennis.
much, Dennis.
Appreciate that. If you are not up to date with Apple Vision Show, you should be. It's a fun show. My co-host Eileen Rivera and I would love to have you along for the ride. We talk about all things Apple, hardware, software, tips and tricks, and above all, what Apple's vision is and if it matches what our vision is for the future. You can join us at applevisionshow.com.
More than 50 shows.
I know. How about that? In fact, let me look at the number, 57. 57. We're going to be recording right after we wrap up here today. How about that? I don't know. We grew up so fast. But you can watch us live here on DTNS Live Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC. And you can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. We're back doing it all again tomorrow with Linda Peralta drawing tech top stories. Talk to you then. Bye.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.